Hi, I'm Karina. I'm a yoga teacher, predominantly a yin yoga teacher, and one of my big passions in yoga is the concept of skeletal variation, well, the facts of skeletal variation actually, to be more accurate. And I'm really passionate about it because it's affected me so personally. And these days in my life, I predominantly focus on the yoga world, but I've had a really long background of being a dancer. And so I've been a mover my whole life. And gosh, I wish that I knew some of the things that I know about the skeleton back then when I was training in this very vigorous way in a very particular kind of movement practice. So these days I am a yoga teacher, as I said, and I spend a lot of time with people that are training to become yoga teachers. So I teach anatomy and I teach a lot about language development. And I see time and time again this feeling in yoga practitioners, especially people that are wanting to become yoga teachers, that they've got a certain relationship with yoga postures where they feel like they're not quite there yet, that their body is magically going to open one day if they just keep working hard enough. And until that point, they feel this sense of lack, or they feel this sense of, I'm not very good at this. But one day I will be, and when I'm good at this, then I'll be really happy. And then I'll feel like I can proudly say that I am a yoga practitioner. And this really grinds my gears. Not that they feel that way, but because of the way that the yoga culture has set this up for them. And I think the way that the fitness industry and the dance industry and the Pilates industry, whilst being so well-intentioned, has also set this up for us. Because not that many people really understand that even though we might have the exact same number and names of bones in our bodies, the shape, length, orientation, and way that they face is going to be different. In other words, that means that your range of motion and my range of motion is going to be different because of the shape of our bones. And that's basically the crux of skeletal variation. And it takes some time to understand what that really means, because we've been very much conditioned to think about our body just in terms of the muscles, because that's the stuff that we can see. And especially in the yoga world, a lot of the time, if there's not enough range of motion, and not enough is definitely a topic I could ramble on about, but let's just come back for a second. If there's not enough range of motion, often we are cued to contract more muscles or use your bandhas, or one day you will get there is the kind of phrase you get given. Okay, I should just I've got to work at this pose. I've got to keep working, and one day I will get there. But if the bones are differently shaped, there's no way of getting around that. And so what I see ending up happen is this kind of carrot on a stick situation, where a well-meaning teacher who might have a very open amount of ranges of motion in their body is giving strong conviction to a room full of students about what they will be able to do, because they themselves can feel it and they themselves got there. So if I got there as the teacher, then I don't see any reason why the rest of you can't get there if you just practice, all is coming. Have you heard that one? Now, I think that you can discuss that phrase in different contexts. Practice, all is coming is a beautiful idea for perseverance with your spiritual practices, but it doesn't make sense if we're thinking about the skeleton. Now, the reason that I find this really troubling is that I see a lot of people grappling with that and feeling bad about themselves, feeling like they're not very good, that they're not good enough. And they are. They're great. I'm great. You're great. Everything we're doing is already great. But that carrot on a stick setup, or stitch up, it widens this huge gap between people being able to drop into a practice with a sense of joy and self-acceptance, and actually feeling like they like being in the body that they're in. So for me personally, I started doing ballet at the age of 4, and I practiced it all the way up until 18. And there's certain stories in my body now that I live with. Story is also my word for injury. There are certain injuries that I have sustained in my body because I didn't understand this about my bones, and the people that were training me may or may not have understood this either. And in ballet, some of the positions, it's like the same kind of strict alignment that you hear in yoga. Some of the positions that you're, ideally meant to place your body in are only going to be attained by people that have quite extraordinary ranges of motion because of their bone shape to start with. And I didn't have that. So if we were just going to think about the hips, for example, the hip socket, the hip ball and socket is one of the most variable places in the body for people to have different ranges of motion, because there's a ton of different ways that shapes come together. So if you've got a hip socket that's very deep or shallow, that's going to make a huge difference between where you can move that femur. And a lot of the things that come up in both ballet and yoga have to do with external rotation of the femur, as in, what some people might say is hip opening, although there are different ranges of motion in the hip that we can have. So for me, I don't have that much external rotation in my hip sockets. I don't either have that much internal rotation either. So if you're familiar with foot positions in ballet, you may or may not be. First position, it's kind of more like that, is like a 180-degree position of placing your heels together and your feet out. So if I had to do that, let's just say that this is the soles of my feet on the floor, my true external rotation would be a little bit like that. But the ideal is like that. Fifth position is similar, it's like that, but my true fifth would be something like that, if that makes sense. Because my femurs won't roll out anymore, which is fine, that's my body. But that wasn't okay with me, because you're not very good if you can't get your feet to that position. So what I used to do is I would put my feet in that position with my knees bent, and then my femurs would have to roll in, if you can follow my subtle animations. And what that ended up doing is stressing out my knees. So to have my feet in that position, my knees had to twist, which is not great. So inside your knees, you've got these two crossed ligaments, your cruciate ligaments, and they are there to essentially stop your femur and your tibia from sliding away from each other. So as a result of years and years and years of doing this multiple times during the week, at the base of both of my ACL ligaments, I've got this giant big circle of scar tissue, because I was tugging on that ligament so much, because that was essentially holding me in that position. So I've probably got all these little micro tears in there as well. And I have a lot of issues with my knees now because of that. And it really wasn't until I studied with Paul Grilley and Bernie Clark, who are magnificent, world-renowned yin yoga teachers, that the penny dropped for me. Oh, okay. All these different things from my movement history now make sense. And now this helps to fill in all the blanks of different things in my yoga practice that might not have felt good, or that I might not have been able to get into because of that. But that doesn't change the fact that for years and years and years, I felt like I was less than. And it's taken a long time to heal that. And I see that in so many people. And it's unnecessary. It's really unnecessary. And when I teach this content to young people that are wanting to become yoga teachers, it's powerful, because they come out of those sessions and think to themselves, oh, wow, yeah, I have been feeling pain in that yoga posture. I have been feeling a tugging, burning sensation in the sides of my knees when I try and get into Padmasana, for example. And I say, that is your body telling you, warning, warning, this is not great, come out. But something about the culture and the conditioning overrides that feeling of pain, and so they've pushed through. But what I love is that when they come out of that, they come out of that session where we break down these myths, like, oh, maybe that pose isn't for me. I'm okay with that. Like, that's great. That pose is not going to get you any closer to God. A headstand isn't going to get you any closer to God, honestly. So when we start breaking apart these pedestal-like postures or these idealized notions in yoga, I think we actually get a nice reality check when we can come back to ourself. What is my body shape? You know, what are my bones shaped like? And what does that posture even do for me? You know, I'm sitting in a seated posture right now, and it's not Padmasana, but I could easily drop into a meditative state. I don't need to have my heels up on top of my hip creases in order to do that. It's just a shape. The culture of social media and that subtle and not so subtle feeling of competition you might get in a yoga room, or the way that you've modeled your idea onto a beautiful yoga teacher that you follow who has a very flexible body and a very big range of motion, can really cement this stuff. So I feel like it's really my work now to keep sharing this information with as many people as I can. Because we don't need any more reasons to feel like we're not great. There's a ton of that already in existence. We don't need any more of that. What we need is practices where we can come and heal the things that have been sitting in our hearts, heal our relationship with ourselves, and love the body that we're in. It's your vehicle. You know, nobody else knows what it's like to live in your body. Only you do. So there's some of the reasons why, as you can tell, I get very passionate about this content, because it's very important. And if something has kind of gone off for you in this video, I really encourage you to keep exploring this for yourself. And some of the best ways that you can do that in whatever movement practice you do is start to pay very close attention to what you're feeling. If you're in a yoga posture, or you're doing any other kind of practice where you're moving your body and your body is giving you a little flag, a burning, a tugging, a pinching, a hard, compressive, painful sensation in your body, pay attention to that. That's not something that's one day just going to unblock and open and disappear. Because what you're probably coming up against is your skeleton. And those pain mechanisms in your body are trying to work with you, not to be disregarded because of some pedestal notion of a yoga posture. So I hope that this story has been helpful for you today. Maybe you're sitting there going, oh my gosh, that's me. Oh, maybe that's why such and such has been going on for you in your practice. Maybe you have a similar story. I'd love to hear it. Reach out and let me know. Thank you so much for listening to this today.